Welcome to this Oxford Analytica video briefing. I'm William Attwell, and with me today is Dr. Olly Owen from Queen Elizabeth House at Oxford University. Today we're going to be discussing the outlook for Nigeria's election, which is happening next week, when President Goodluck Jonathan will go head-to-head with APC candidate Muhammadu Buhari in what promises to be the most competitive election in Nigeria's political history. Olly, while this is a tightly contested poll, it's also overlaid with a range of complex security concerns and also logistical challenges, most recently and well documented, being the distribution of voter ID cards. How is this playing into how the voting day will actually play out?
Well, you're right to say this is going to be the most closely contested election since 1999, and because of that, a lot of the tensions which we would normally see have been heightened. There have been a few developments in Nigeria over the years around elections, around making election security tighter, making the kind of thing that we saw in 2003 or even 2007 with thugs running around collecting ballot boxes and stuffing them less likely to happen. But at the same time, the overall election security, while it's been tightened, there's also complaints from the opposition that it's been unevenly tightened, so it makes life sometimes harder for them, with state security agencies clamping down harder on them than on the ruling party. Now, that remains to be seen whether that's something that will play out or not, but it's certainly something that is being mooted by the opposition right now. We have the Boko Haram insurgency in the north, which has killed about 18,000 people, and a huge amount of public disenchantment with the way that the war against that has been conducted. So there's a lot of public disappointment at the way that that has affected Nigeria, and has affected Nigeria's international standing as well as domestic security.
Is there a risk of real political violence on the day or following the poll?
It's unlikely that you would see political violence on the day. If there's a controversial result, following the poll might be something we'd see. It depends largely on the cues that political parties give to their supporters, but there is certainly the potential for it if people feel disenfranchised, which is another reason why the issue of voters' card that you mentioned is important. Although INEC are assuring everybody that they can get them their permanent voters' card in time, the situation really shouldn't have come to this. It was very predictable. There have been 4 years to prepare. Things shouldn't be left this late in the day. So it's really unfortunate that the logistical arrangements have allowed people to build up this measure of distrust in the system or fear of disenfranchisement.
Now, Nigeria's political geography is highly complex and very regional, as well as religious and ethnic. How do you see President Goodluck Jonathan mobilizing sufficient majority to stay in power, or are there other scenarios that might play out where he could actually lose to the opposition?
Yeah, I mean, there are 4 scenarios, and at the moment it's very hard to see which is the most likely. The first is that Goodluck Jonathan could win a clear majority at the polls. The second, that the opposition candidate, former General Buhari, could win a clear outright majority. The third is a runoff election. Nigeria's constitution provides for a runoff. In order to win, you have to get both a majority and a stipulated minimum proportion of the vote in a number of states, and that's to stop one part of the country just electing a president. It has to be a spread. So if you fail to get that, the possibility of runoff election. And the fourth possibility is that the opposition could win the general vote, but then the government could be reluctant to go and could introduce procedural measures, difficulties, delays, contest the outcome. If that were to happen, it would certainly raise tensions.
There's already, of course, been discussion about delaying the election based on security concerns, although it remains to be seen whether the Election Commission makes a call on that. Another concern is, of course, whether a post-election government will be able to push through some really difficult reforms, most notably to the oil sector. And there was recently an audit report by PricewaterhouseCoopers which really recommended some fundamental reforms to the state oil company, noting its propensity for fiscal leakage, shall we say. Would any sort of combination of political actors be able to drive through the reforms that are needed to that sector?
Well, that largely depends on who wins the election. While it's true to say that second-term governors and presidents in Nigeria enjoy a lot more independence and freedom of action, they're not as bound to the people who put them there to start with. So second-term Goodluck Jonathan could have a lot more leeway to act and a lot less pressure on him. He'd be more his own man with a second mandate. Having said that, the first term was particularly unimpressive in terms of things like leakages and corruption generally, when the central bank governor pointed out that there were $20 billion missing in what the oil company should have remitted, the response was to sack him. So we're unlikely to see a huge amount of movement on that based on past record. If Buhari was to win, he's campaigning on an anti-corruption agenda. He had a very strong reputation on that while in office in the 1980s as a military head of state, and he has some very technocratic people like the outgoing governor of Lagos State around him. He would certainly enjoy more of a public mandate to do that. Having said that, whoever tries to grab this thistle, there's going to be a certain amount of pushback from the kind of entrenched political elite, and whoever's going to do it is going to need a lot of public goodwill and legitimacy to be able to push it through.
Now, finally, on foreign and security policy, there's been some rather dramatic offensives against Boko Haram positions in northeastern Nigeria, notably led by Chadian troops. How is this playing out within the political elites in Abuja? How do they view the presence of foreign troops, and is there any sort of sense of anxiety, particularly at this really sensitive time in the political calendar?
Well, I think there might not be a sense of anxiety. There's certainly a sense of has it come to this? Nigeria used to be the country that sorted out everybody else's headaches in the region. Now it's become the headache of the region. So I think at the moment, the realists in the elite realise that this is help that they can do with. At the same time, it's embarrassing to Nigeria to have to ask for help from smaller countries, or albeit countries with a more effective military and a better history of tackling insurgencies. It's a real kind of indictment, and I think Nigeria's prestige is at stake with it. It's another thing that plays into the dynamic around elections. I'm not sure that those foreign troops on Nigerian soil is an electoral issue in itself, but it certainly plays into the idea that all is not well with the way that the Nigerian state can handle its challenges.
Well, great. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for joining us for this OA video briefing. We look forward to welcoming you next time.